The humid morning mist hung heavy over the lower Zambezi National Park, clinging to the ancient acacia trees like a shroud. Mosi Kunda, his weathered face a roadmap of 50-odd years under the African sun, navigated his worn Land Cruiser along the barely visible track. His dusty green uniform, frayed at the cuffs, and well-worn boots were testaments to a life spent protecting this unforgiving, beautiful land. Today, however, an unfamiliar stillness permeated the air, a silent tension that prickled at the back of his neck, unsettling a man who knew every whisper of the bush. The river, usually a lifeblood of calm majesty, felt different, ominous. His ancient radio crackled to life, slicing through the quiet. Kunda, this is HQ. Report of the unusual lion activity near Delta 7. Distress calls reported by research team. Investigate. Mosi's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Unusual lion activity often meant trouble, but distress calls from a research team suggested something far more serious than a territorial dispute. He pushed the Land Cruiser harder, the engine groaning in protest as he sped toward the designated coordinates. What he found at Delta 7 froze the breath in his lungs. The Zambezi, swollen by an unseasonal flash flood, raged like a wounded beast, its brown waters churning with terrifying power. And caught within its relentless current, barely clinging to life, was a young male lion, Kofi. Mosi recognized him instantly, a vibrant, promising young male from the Mwamba pride. Kofi thrashed, his tawny fur matted, his roars choked by the spray, a desperate losing battle against the river's immense force. Then Mosi saw it, dark, indistinguishable debris shimmering faintly beneath the surface, wrapped tightly around Kofi's hind leg, anchoring him, dragging him, making his struggle a certain death sentence. On the opposite bank, a heart-wrenching tableau unfolded. The Mwamba pride, led by the formidable matriarch Nala and the massive scarred male, Chifundo, stood in an unprecedented, organized display of anguish. Their collective roars, usually symbols of power and dominion, were now mournful laments, echoing across the churning water. Lionesses paced agitatedly, their heads bowed, their eyes fixed on their struggling kin, a raw, primal grief that Mosi had never witnessed in all his years. Mosi snatched his satellite phone. HQ, Kunda, I have a lion in distress, caught in the floodwaters near Delta 7. It's Kofi, from the Mwamba pride. He knew the rules, the strict, unyielding park protocols. Intervention was forbidden. Natural selection. The words tasted like ash. The response from HQ was immediate, devoid of any warmth. Negative on any intervention, Kunda. Natural selection protocols remain in effect. Document and observe only. The line went dead. Mosi clenched his jaw, the bone working beneath his skin. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from a burgeoning rage, a profound moral crisis. He knew the flood wasn't entirely natural. He'd seen the signs, heard the whispers of unsustainable human development upstream, the illegal clear-cutting, the poorly managed dams, all contributing to the severity of these flash floods and the accelerated erosion. This wasn't just nature taking its course. This was humanity's ghost in the machine. And now Kofi was paying the price. As if to punctuate his internal turmoil, Kofi's head submerged, then broke the surface with a ghastly, ragged roar. It wasn't a roar of challenge or dominance, but a raw, desperate plea, a sound of utter defeat that vibrated through the humid air and shook Mosi to his very core. His eyes, now scanning frantically, caught another detail in the churn. The debris wasn't just natural entanglement. He could clearly make out the dark mesh of a discarded fishing net, tangled with plastic sheeting, wrapped inextricably around Kofi's leg, digging into his flesh. A stark, undeniable reminder of humanity's direct, dangerous impact on the wild, masquerading as a natural disaster. Words. 818. Nala's mournful call, a sound ripped from the depths of her soul, clawed at Mosi's composure. It wasn't just a roar, it was a lament, a plea that echoed across the raging Zambezi, carrying the collective anguish of the entire Mwamba pride. In that moment, Mosi knew. His decision, nascent and terrifying, solidified into an unyielding resolve. His rational mind screamed at him. Park regulations, etched into his very being after decades of service, flashed like angry red warnings. Non-intervention. Human safety paramount. Predators are unpredictable. The Zambezi itself, a maelstrom of angry brown water and unseen currents, promised certain death. To approach a distressed, entangled alien, even a young one, was an act of profound idiocy, an invitation to be torn apart. But his heart, a relentless drumbeat against his ribs, pounded with a different rhythm. It was a rhythm of deep, aching compassion. This wasn't natural selection playing out in its pure, brutal form. This was a tragedy amplified, distorted, by human greed and carelessness. The discarded fishing net, the plastic sheeting, these were silent accusations, condemning humanity for pushing nature to its breaking point. He tore his gaze from Kofi's struggle for a moment, observing the pride on the far bank. What he saw defied everything he knew about lion behavior. Nala, the matriarch, was positioned strategically upstream, her eyes fixed on Kofi, occasionally glancing towards the banks where her pride members were spread out. Not in a hunting formation, not in aggression, but along potential landing points, forming a living, breathing safety net, anticipating Kofi's drift. It was an unprecedented, organized display of desperation and hope. And remarkably, despite their heightened agitation, their roars of sorrow, none of the pride members showed aggression towards him. Their amber eyes, usually blazing with fierce territoriality, instead held a desperate, intelligent plea. A silent understanding passed between species, an unspoken plea that pierced Mosi's carefully constructed, professional detachment. "I can't just watch him die," he muttered, the words heavy with defiance against decades of protocol, against every instinct of self-preservation. It was a betrayal of his duty, perhaps, but a sacred oath to the land he loved. He turned, a man possessed, and strode back to his vehicle. From the cluttered back, he retrieved his emergency inflatable rescue boat, a lightweight, compact craft typically reserved for swiftwater rescue of humans caught in floods, or for research teams needing to cross minor channels. Next came the ropes, the specialized cutting tools, the dry bag for his satellite phone, and the first aid kit. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, inflating the small raft with a foot pump, checking the lines, securing his tools. But even as his body worked on autopilot, his mind wrestled with the immense personal and professional risks. He could lose his cuerpo, his reputation, his freedom. He could lose his life. Everything. He caught Kofi's golden eyes again across the churning water. In those depths, Mosi saw not just an animal fighting for survival, but a spark of intelligence, a desperate will. An unspoken connection, profound and ancient, transcended the species barrier, binding Ranger and Lion in this critical moment. "No turning back now," Mosi said aloud, the words a commitment, a prayer. He heaved the lightweight craft onto the muddy bank, then, with a surge of adrenaline, pushed it into the powerful, unforgiving current. Words, 7:45. The Zambezi seized Mosi's small inflatable boat with an immediate, violent embrace. The powerful current, a relentless surge of brown water, grabbed the fragile craft and yanked it downstream, directly towards the struggling young lion. Mosi gripped the oars, digging them in with all his strength, fighting to maintain some semblance of control. But the river was a beast, its will absolute. As he drew closer, battling the cold, turbulent water spraying into his face, Kofi's exhausted eyes locked onto his. There was a flicker of something Mosi couldn't quite name. Profound weariness, yes, but also a cautious, almost desperate recognition. And remarkably, no aggression. None of the territorial fury a cornered predator might unleash. "Easy there, big fellow," Mosi murmured, his voice a steady, calm counterpoint to the river's roar. "I'm here to help you, just hold on." He spoke instinctively, a lifelong habit of trying to soothe any distressed creature he encountered. The boat bumped Kofi's flank with a gentle nudge. The lion flinched, a jolt running through his massive body, but instead of lashing out with teeth or claws, he merely let out a soft groan. It was an unprecedented calm, a trust that defied every wild instinct Mosi knew. Reaching out, Mosi could finally see the full extent of the horror. It wasn't just vague debris, Kofi's hind leg was ensnared by a dense, suffocating mass, discarded fishing net, its synthetic strands gleaming dully under the water, woven tightly with sheets of plastic waste. This was not natural entanglement. This was irrefutable human pollution, a man-made trap. The sight sent a cold chill down Mosi's spine. This was the first tangible evidence of the human-related danger that haunted his thoughts, hinting at a wider, more insidious problem lurking beneath the surface of the park's pristine image. He fumbled for his utility knife, its blade sharp and ready. Every nerve ending in his body screamed caution. One wrong move, one sudden lunge from the lion, and the fragile piece could shatter. A single panicked swipe of Kofi's paw could tear through the inflatable raft, or through Mosi himself. On the riverbank, the Mwamba Pride kept pace. Nala, her eyes never leaving Kofi, moved downstream in perfect synchronicity with their drift. Chifundo and the other lionesses maintained their living safety net formation, shadowing Mosi's desperate act. Their collective vigil a palpable pressure, a silent command for success. Mosi plunged his hand into the frigid water, the current tugging at his arm. He began to cut, meticulously, strand by agonizing strand. The synthetic fibers were tougher than they looked, resisting the blade. He worked slowly, deliberately, feeling Kofi's subtle shifts, movements that suggested an almost impossible understanding, a cooperation from the wild animal. The lion seemed to tense when Mosi had to pull a strand tight for a better cut, and then relaxed once it gave way. Finally, with a soft snick, the last piece of the entanglement severed. The deadly weight was gone. Kofi's body changed, his posture loosening, his movements in the water becoming more coordinated, less desperate. He was free, but they were not yet safe. The powerful current, relentless and unforgiving, continued to pull them downstream, carrying them rapidly towards a treacherous stretch of steep, rocky banks, where the river narrowed and the rapids grew fiercer. The danger had merely shifted, not disappeared. The treacherous rapids loomed ahead, a jagged, churning maw of white water and exposed rock. Mosi, soaked and shivering, paddled with a furious desperation, aiming for a small, distant sandbar that offered their only chance of escape. "Come on, Kofi," he urged, his voice hoarse. "Swim with me, big fellow." And Kofi responded. With renewed purpose, the young lion's powerful strokes cut through the water, his body moving in unison with Mosi's frantic paddling. A surreal partnership forged in the heart of danger, man and apex predator, united against the relentless river. On the riverbanks, the Mwamba Pride, a beacon of watchful hope, anticipated their trajectory. Several lionesses had already positioned themselves near the sandbar, their chuffing calls now filled with encouragement, a living compass guiding their escape. Higher up, on a rocky outcrop, Chifundo, the colossal dominant male, stood sentinel, his commanding presence overseeing their arduous journey, his steady gaze a silent promise. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the sandbar. Kofi's massive paws touched solid ground. Digging into the soft sand, he pulled himself out of the water, exhausted but powerfully, undeniably alive. Mosi, spent but exhilarated, watched him, expecting Kofi to immediately bolt for his waiting pride, to melt back into the wild. But Kofi didn't. Instead, he turned, his huge body shimmering with river water and his golden eyes, once filled with desperation, now locked onto Mosi's in a profound, unblinking gaze. The air crackled with an unspoken understanding. Then, in an act that defied every single scientific observation Mosi had ever known, Kofi dipped his massive head. It was a clear, deliberate bow, a gesture of undeniable acknowledgement, direct and unequivocal. Mosi, ankle-deep in the shallow water, could only stare, stunned into silence. After that extraordinary moment, Kofi waded ashore to an emotional reunion. Nala, her body vibrating with relief, met him with soft chuffing sounds and nuzzling. The entire pride swarmed around him, rubbing against him, their collective relief a palpable wave that washed over the sandbar. Mosi, still in a daze, dragged his inflatable boat onto the sand, his limbs heavy from exertion and the emotional weight of what he had just witnessed. As he worked, the entire Mwamba Pride turned their attention back to him. They observed his every movement, their eyes intelligent, scrutinizing, but devoid of any aggression. It was a focused, collective gaze, a profound testament to their intelligence, and Mosi dared to believe their gratitude. Then Chifundo began to move. The massive dominant male, a creature of immense power and unpredictable ferocity, descended from his rocky perch with deliberate, non-aggressive strides. Mosi's heart hammered against his ribs, a primal fear momentarily eclipsing his awe. This was it. The alpha was coming. Chifundo stopped just yards from Mosi, his head held high, his powerful muscles rippling under his tawny coat. The silence was absolute, broken only by the lapping of the river against the sandbar. Then slowly, majestically, Chifundo lowered his front end, dipping his enormous head in a second, undeniable bow. It was a profound display of respect, an act that defied every documented wild animal behavior, a gesture that shattered Mosi's understanding of the natural world and irrevocably changed his perception of these magnificent creatures. If you thought things were wild already, buckle up, because the real shockers are just beginning. We're talking about a bond that defies nature and a conspiracy that threatens to unravel everything. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss a single heart-pounding moment as we dive deeper into this life-threatening mystery. Still reeling from Chifundo's unbelievable bow, Mosi fumbled with his satellite phone, his fingers stiff from the cold river water. He punched in HQ's number, his voice still hoarse as he reported, "Kunda here. Successful rescue of the male lion, Kofi, from the flood, and the entire pride is exhibiting unprecedented peaceful behavior toward human presence. Absolutely no aggression." A stunned silence met his words from the other end, a disbelief so profound it spoke volumes. The dispatcher, a man usually unflappable, was clearly rendered speechless. As Mosi lowered the phone, Kofi, the massive young lion he had just saved, took another step. He didn't rejoin his pride immediately. Instead, he positioned himself protectively between Mosi and the other lions, his amber eyes watchful, intelligent, an unprecedented display of reciprocal concern. A chill ran down Mosi's spine, not from fear, but from the sheer unsettling implications. Lions protecting humans? This behavior challenged every scientific understanding of animal cognition, every textbook he had ever studied. It was as if they understood, not just his actions, but the inherent danger of his defiance. His mind flashed back to the fishing net and plastic sheeting that had almost claimed Kofi's life. It wasn't just an accident, a random piece of litter. It was a symptom, a pervasive, inescapable, human-related danger that was scarring the pristine wilderness, subtly but irrevocably. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. The altered river flows, the increased flash floods, washing down more and more man-made debris, the widespread, visible pollution. These weren't random acts of nature. They were consistent, connected. A cold certainty began to crystallize in Mosi's mind, a terrifying whisper of conspiracy. He started to suspect a much larger, systemic problem, a deliberate downplaying or perhaps an outright cover-up of industrial or governmental negligence upstream. He pictured vast development projects, unchecked waste disposal, all feeding into the lifeblood of the Zambezi, silently poisoning it, threatening its inhabitants. The Mwamba Pride's unprecedented intelligence and gratitude weren't just remarkable animal behavior. They were a silent, living testament to humanity's profound impact and ethical failures, bearing witness to a truth humans refuse to acknowledge. This went far beyond breaking protocol for a single lion rescue. Mosi felt a chilling certainty that he had stumbled upon a deeper, dark secret that transcended routine wildlife management. The stakes, he realized, were infinitely higher than his own career, or even his life. The fate of the entire ecosystem, perhaps, hung in the balance. In the fading daylight, the distant drone of an approaching rescue boat echoed across the water. HQ, finally dispatching help, perhaps a bit late for protocol. The Pride, sensing the intrusion, began to prepare their departure, not with fear, but with a dignified farewell melting back into the shadows of the bank. Before rejoining his family, Kofi turned back to Mosi. He slowly, gently, placed one enormous soft paw on Mosi's worn boot. It was an unmistakable farewell, a final tangible touch that cemented their extraordinary bond and underscored the profound gravity of what Mosi had witnessed. Then, with a quiet strength, Kofi turned and disappeared into the deepening gloom, leaving Mosi alone on the sandbar, now burdened with a terrible, dangerous truth. Weeks blurred into a month. Mosi Kunda found himself assigned to the same sector, a routine placement that he shrewdly suspected was designed to monitor his unauthorized intervention. They wanted to see if the Maverick Ranger would overstep again, if his compassion was a one-off aberration or a new dangerous pattern. But Mosi, ever the stoic, simply performed his duties, observing, documenting, waiting. What he discovered was more profound than any administrative reprisal. The Mwamba Pride, far from avoiding him, had not only accepted his presence, but had incorporated the memory of his assistance into their intricate social understanding. Their roars, once tinged with suspicion, now held a note of calm recognition. On his third patrol after the rescue, Mosi parked his Land Cruiser on a rise overlooking a watering hole where the Pride rested. Suddenly, Kofi, the young lion whose life Mosi had saved, lifted his massive head. His golden eyes, bright and intelligent, looked directly at Mosi's vehicle. Then, to Mosi's utter astonishment, Kofi voluntarily rose to his feet and began to walk. Not toward the water, not toward his pride, but toward Mosi. He stopped a mere 20 meters from the vehicle, sat down, and simply gazed, an undeniable, clear recognition in his stare. The rest of the Pride, including the formidable Shifundo and Nala, observed this unprecedented interaction with calm acceptance. No territorial aggression, no warning growls, just a profound, quiet understanding. Mosi, his hands trembling slightly, meticulously documented everything in his field journal, sketching Kofi's posture, noting the Pride's serene demeanor. This was irrefutable proof. This ongoing, intelligent behavior defied all conventional scientific understanding of animal cognition. As the days turned into weeks and Kofi's voluntary approaches became a regular occurrence, Mosi began to connect the dots. The severity of the flash flood, the sheer volume of human pollution, the fishing net, the plastic sheeting that had almost killed Kofi, the subtly altered river flow. These weren't isolated incidents. They were direct, undeniable consequences of unchecked human development upstream. The initial human-related danger that trapped Kofi now appeared as a stark, chilling symptom of a much larger, systemic environmental conspiracy, a deliberate failure by corporations or even governmental entities to regulate and address their devastating impact on the delicate ecosystem of the Zambezi. The park, once a sanctuary, was being slowly choked by neglect and greed, and the rangers, by protocol, were forced to watch. Mosi's final confrontation wasn't with a hidden operative or a shadowy figure. It was with the shocking, insidious realization of this widespread environmental cover-up. The animals' unprecedented trust in him, their intelligent gratitude, wasn't just a miracle. It was a silent, desperate plea for justice. They were not just wild creatures, they were witnesses. He now understood the dark secrets of human progress, the hidden cost imposed on nature, and the unique, often underestimated intelligence of the animals who bore witness to it. The Mwamba Pride, through their extraordinary bond, had given him more than just their trust. They had given him a new purpose. Mosi resolved to share this extraordinary story, not just as a park ranger who had broken protocol, but as a witness, a messenger for the voiceless. He believed that the Mwamba Pride's trust was a call to action, a profound truth revealing that the most profound connections transcend boundaries, and that this truth, no matter how dangerous it sounds, absolutely must be told. End. Words, 752, conclusion. Mosi Kunda, a ranger seasoned by 23 years of patrolling Zambia's lower Zambezi National Park, had always prided himself on reading the subtle signs of nature's drama unfolding. Yet nothing in his extensive experience, not even the urgency in the dispatcher's voice on that humid February morning, could have prepared him for the series of events that would irrevocably alter his understanding of both the wild and humanity itself. His agonizing decision to defy protocol and pull young Kofi from the raging, human-polluted Zambezi River unlocked an unbelievable truth. The Pride's unprecedented gestures of gratitude, Kofi's profound bow, Chifundo's majestic acknowledgement, were not just heartwarming, they were a chilling testament. They bore silent witness to a far larger, insidious environmental conspiracy, a dark secret of unchecked human progress that threatened to devour the very world Mosi had sworn to protect. Now, armed with this forbidden knowledge and the extraordinary trust of the lions, Mosi stands ready. No longer just a ranger, but a crucial witness, compelled to unveil the truth, believing that the most profound connections transcend boundaries. And this story, however dangerous, must be told.